My hair is getting so annoying. Forget the hair. What's important? The question today that we'll be looking at is, what is the best landscape camera to get for amateurs, novices, people that want to upgrade? Let's have a look. Because I've been using the Sony A7R series for some years now, and I've got a few thoughts. Beep boop beep beep boop 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 beep boop beep boop beep boop 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 beep boop. Boo! A brief history. Started off with the Sony A6000 24 megapixel camera, and I used that for some years and took some great pictures with it. So don't discount those little APS-C crop censored cameras. They're pretty good. I then moved up to the Sony A7R2 and I did a video, I'll link it somewhere, and the jump in quality was actually surprising how much better the quality was, how much it improved, not only in megapixels going from 24 to 42, but in just the dynamic range and the versatility of the raw files on the A7R2 compared. Then later on, about a year, 18 months later, I upgraded to the Sony A7R3 and I've been using this one ever since. Now, I didn't need to upgrade to the Sony A7R3 from the A7R2. The A7R2 was fantastic for landscape photography. I upgraded because there are a few extra needs that I wanted. For example, dual card slots and having a bigger buffer and these kinds of things, and better autofocus for wedding photography. So there was a specific reason that I upgraded to the Sony A7R3, and for those needs it does pretty well. Now the A7R2, I shot a wedding with that and I struggled because of those limiting factors, mostly because I was scared of losing pictures because it only had the one SD card slot. I want to just go through and compare some stats and things and kind of talk about what matters and what doesn't matter. Now, something for landscape photography that doesn't matter when it comes to the Sony A7R series is their handling. It's irrelevant to me because most of the time it's just going to be on a tripod. Also, autofocus. Irrelevant. It doesn't matter how fast it is because 99% of the time I will be using manual focus. And for those that do like to use the camera's autofocus to focus, well, speed is a bit irrelevant. So comparing what some people think is the determining factor between all these cameras, and that's megapixels. So starting off with the A7R, 36 megapixels. Now, that is no small number of megapixels. Compared to a lot of cameras today, yeah, it can seem quite small, but I'll be honest, 24 megapixels with the Sony A6000 was plenty, and 36, which is a good bump up, will be plenty good again. The A7R2 and the A7R3 were exactly the same sensor with 42 megapixels, and I found that that was, again, more than enough. And I felt no need to have an increase to the A7R4 with 61 megapixels. I think that is just crazy. I think you'd have to really be doing professional kind of commercial landscape photography to justify that amount of megapixels, really. Or if you just got deep pockets, then go for it. So I would say really megapixels doesn't matter between any of these cameras. Whatever one you pick up, image quality wise, they will all be fantastic. And connected with the image quality is to do with the raw files and the fact that they are 14-bit raw files. Now, I mentioned earlier about the Sony A6000. Now, one of its drawbacks was that the raw files were 12-bit. So the amount of colours was, I mean, it's a lot. 12-bit is a lot of colours, but it just doesn't stretch as far as 14-bit, especially when it's connected with the dynamic range. All the A7R cameras, in fact, I'm pretty sure all the full-frame Sony cameras are all 14-bit, and all the crop-censored APS-C Sony cameras, I'm pretty sure, are 12-bit. So that in itself, going from 12-bit to 14-bit, is a massive jump in dynamic range. Forget the resolution. So 14-bit RAWs, combine that with loads of megapixels is excellent. Another massive factor that increased the quality going from the Sony A6000 up to the A7R series is the fact that there's no anti-alias filter, no AA filter on the A7R cameras. If you watch the video where I compare the A6000 to the A7R2, you will see that, what was it? I think I shot something like an 18 megapixel crop censored image from the A7R2, compared that with the A6000 crop censored, which would be 24, and even though it had lower megapixels, the fact that it had no anti-alias filter, it just increased its sharpness no end, because the whole purpose of the AA filter is to actually cause blur. Not having an AA filter makes a difference, and none of the A7R cameras have that. Something else that will make a real difference is the rear screen. Now going from the A6000 up to the A7R2, I did notice a massive jump in screen quality, and that really helped to just not only with the composition, but finding the sharpness and manually focusing the lens. So that made a massive difference. Now, comparing the screens on the A7R series, the A7R, the original one, 921,000 dot screen. Then the A7R2 was 1.23 million, so it jumped up a bit. Then the A7R3 was 1.44 million, and the A7R4 was originally 1.44 million, but I know they've just revised the screens on the back. You got the A7R4A, which has a higher quality screen, the same one as the Sony A7S3, I believe. Really, the A7R4A would have the best screen, but between the original A7R4 and the A7R3 and the A7R2, I would say that's negligible. Going from the A7R2 to the A7R3 with screen going up 0.2 million dots is negligible. You won't notice the difference in that. I never did when I went from A7R2 to A7R3. The Viewfinder, which I use now and again, the A7R, the A7R2, they were both 2.36 million dots. Then there was a jump to the A7R3 with 3.68, and again another jump, A7R4, 5.76 million. You could probably notice a difference going from the A7R2 to the A7R4, but between the A7R2 and A7R3, again, I wouldn't really say I noticed any real difference. Now, a big deal breaker for some people might be when it comes to the batteries. Everyone knows that Sony upgraded the batteries. I don't even have a battery in here. Everyone knows that Sony upgraded to these bigger FZ100 batteries, which do make a massive difference when it comes to battery life. Now, when I'm shooting a full wedding day, I just use 2 of these, and they last me the whole day. When it goes out to landscape photography, yeah, 1 battery will do you easy. But also when it came to the older, smaller ones, the FW50s, I never really had a problem with them. I would find one of them would last me for a morning shoot. The flip side is, even though they're smaller and they don't last as long, probably a third to half of the time of the newer batteries, they're cheap to pick up off Amazon. Cheap, and you can just buy a load of them and just have them there ready, charged, ready to go. It swings and roundabouts with that one, but I found battery life with the old batteries was fine as it was. Now, I alluded to it earlier, but card slots. One of the reasons I upgraded from the A7R2 to the 3 was dual card slots. And not only just dual card slots, one of them is UHS 2. Now, when it comes to landscape photography, this makes 0 difference whether it's UHS 1 or UHS 2. The speed is irrelevant, I find, because we're not taking that many pictures. The difference I found is when it comes to burst shooting, when I'm doing wedding photography, that's when it makes a difference. But because I have to back up to the other card, which is UHS 1, you're slowed down by that anyway, so it's kind of an annoying thing with the A7R III that you have one UHS2 and one UHS1. It's frustrating. But with the A7R IV, they're both UHS2, so that annoying feature is now gone, which is very good. Now, the question is, do you really need dual card slots for landscape photography? I would say, realistically, it's a very slim chance that you're going to lose some pictures from a morning. If I lost a client's images from a wedding day, that is a killer. Whereas if you lose your images from your morning out, going out to take a few pictures at sunrise, really not the end of the world. It's annoying, but it's really not the end of the world. Now, I'm not going to tell you which is the best camera. That whatever one you get will be brilliant, but it comes down to money at the end of the day. If you want the best, well, you need to spend out big for the A7R IV, over £3,000. The A7R3 is £2,500, about that. A7R2 you can still buy new, surprisingly, probably just old stock sitting around. It's about £1,700, and the A7R, which I was looking online, used between £600 and £700. Oh, now, if you're kind of wondering, oh, which one should I get, A7R2 or A7R3? One thing that may sway you, other than the dual card slots and the bigger battery, is the fact that with the A7R3, they jumped to using a joystick. Now, if you're someone that likes to focus using the autofocus, the joystick makes it so much easier, whereas before, not that I ever did it, I believe you'd have to use the D-pad thing here, which is just a bit annoying. Using that joystick is so much nicer to use for finding that focus point. Also, I need to check, can I focus using the touchscreen? That was a manual lens, by the way, so I wouldn't find out. Can I focus? Because I don't ever do it this way. Can I focus using... Yes. Another great feature is that you can focus using a touchscreen. So that might be a deal breaker for you as well. So at the end of the day, if you're needing to upgrade and you're not sure which of the Sony A7R cameras to get, I can highly suggest the A7R II if you really want to save money. But if you're more concerned about having backups and a bigger battery, you know, the joystick, the touchscreen, really I'd go for the A7R III over the A7R IV. You're going to save money. Yes, there's less pixels, megapixels, but really I can't warrant the jump in price for the megapixels, because 42 is plenty. Future Jamie here, just editing, and realised an important point I forgot to mention was the fact that the more money you save on the camera, the more you can spend on the lenses. And don't forget, if you need to buy cheaper lenses, get Canon. I've got another video about that here and why I use Canon lenses, basically because it's cheaper, but we can talk about that in another video. Okay, bye. Past Jamie, the 42 megapixel files in this are 80 megabytes each. So for a 61 megapixel camera, I mean, it's got to be over 100 megabytes, 120 I reckon, for a 61 megapixel file. So you're going to be chewing through hard disk space like no tomorrow. So yeah, top recommendations, A7R2, and if you've got a bit of a bigger budget, go for the A7R3. And if you've got pockets as deep as the Hoover Dam, then A7R4. So those are my thoughts on which landscape photography camera to get in 2021. Yeah. Bye.